I am 34 years old, and 17 days before my younger sister's wedding, my parents emailed me 5 conditions I had to obey if I wanted a seat in the ballroom. I had to drop every financial complaint against her, sign a confidentiality agreement, surrender my claim to our grandmother's property, contribute $25,000 to the wedding, and read a public apology for damaging family unity. At the bottom, my father had written, "Complete all 5, and we'll let you come." I read the message twice, then noticed the attachment they expected me to sign before midnight. They thought the deadline would frighten me. Instead, it clarified everything. I typed 4 words. I decline all 5. Sent the reply, booked a beach suite in Malibu for the wedding weekend, and called a courier about one final gift. The box looked elegant enough for a bride who had turned her wedding into a 300-person performance. Inside, however, was something she had spent 2 years making sure no one would ever see. I knew she would open it publicly because she had already ordered the MC to announce every expensive present from important family. What she did not know was that my gift had no jewelry, no cash, and no apology. It contained a timeline, a voice recording, and one document carrying a signature that looked exactly like mine, but was not. Before I tell you what she said, and what happened after that box was opened, tell me, what time is it for you right now? Where are you watching from? And what is the weather like there? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The first person I mentioned in that email was my younger sister. Her name was Natalie, and for most of our lives, my parents treated her mistakes as emergencies. Everyone else was responsible for solving. She was charming in public, quick with compliments, and gifted at making people feel chosen. At home, she measured relationships by usefulness. When she needed a college deposit, I loaned her the money. When she left a marketing job after 6 months, I helped her rewrite her resume and covered 2 months of rent. When she launched a luxury event company, I introduced her to 3 clients from my accounting firm. Every favor came with the same promise: she would repay me when things stabilized. Things never stabilized. The promises simply changed shape. Our grandmother had seen the pattern before anyone else admitted it. She left a restored coastal house called Mariner's Point to Natalie and me in equal shares, with a strict clause requiring both signatures for loans, sales, or major renovations. The place had sentimental value, but it also generated steady income from small weddings and corporate retreats. I handled the books. Natalie handled promotions. That arrangement lasted until she became engaged to a restaurant developer named Daniel Mercer. He was thoughtful, successful, and completely convinced that Natalie had built her company without family money. I did not dislike him. In fact, that made everything worse. 6 months before the wedding, I noticed a loan payment in the Mariner's Point ledger that I had never approved. The lender's description was vague, and when I asked Natalie about it, she laughed and said it was a temporary line of credit for renovations. I requested the loan file. She delayed. My parents told me not to create tension before the wedding. Then the lender finally sent a partial copy, and there it was, a commercial note for $240,000 secured against the property, bearing what appeared to be my electronic signature. I had never seen the document. I had never authorized the loan. When I confronted Natalie privately, she did not deny using the money. She said the wedding had grown more expensive, her company had cash flow problems, and Daniel's new restaurant needed a bridge investment. Then she leaned across my desk and said, "You own half of something valuable. I needed you to act like family." I told her a forged signature was not a family favor. She rolled her eyes and accused me of being jealous because she was getting married first. That evening, my mother called and said Natalie had made a technical mistake that could be fixed if I signed retroactive consent. My father followed with a message reminding me how embarrassing an investigation would be for everyone. I refused. 2 weeks later, the 5 conditions arrived. The confidentiality agreement was not really about wedding behavior. Buried on page 6 was language releasing Natalie, my parents, their companies, and the lender from any claims related to prior financial decisions. The public apology was not about peace. It was designed to make me look unstable before I ever challenged the forged loan. The $25,000 contribution would help replace money already missing from the property account, and surrendering my share of Mariner's Point would give Natalie complete control of the collateral. For the first time, I saw the conditions as a coordinated plan rather than a collection of insults. They were not offering me permission to attend a wedding. They were asking me to erase the evidence against them while smiling for photographs. I forwarded everything to my attorney, then called my closest friend, Emma Reed. I had known Emma since graduate school, and she was the only person who had warned me years earlier that loyalty without boundaries becomes unpaid labor. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked one question. "Do you want to be understood, or do you want to be protected?" I said both. She told me I might have to choose the order. Protection came first. That night, I placed a fraud alert on my credit, requested the complete loan file, and instructed my attorney to notify the lender that my signature was disputed. Then I booked Malibu. The vacation was real. I needed distance from the wedding and from the version of myself my family expected to appear on command. But the gift was real too. Natalie had spent months planning a grand pre-ceremony presentation in which selected relatives would offer blessings and premium gifts before the doors opened for the vows. She had even emailed me twice asking for a meaningful family tribute that could be played on the ballroom screen. I decided to give her exactly that. A record of what our family had become, prepared with the same precision I used in a forensic audit. I did not plan to scream, interrupt, or beg anyone to believe me. I planned to let dates, transfers, signatures, and Natalie's own words speak in the room I had been ordered to enter silently. 3 days later, I was in Malibu with Emma, sitting at a narrow dining table covered in bank statements, loan exhibits, property records, and color-coded notes. The ocean was visible through the windows, but I barely looked at it. Every hour produced another fact that made the 5 conditions feel less like parental pressure and more like an attempted cover-up. The complete loan file arrived first. My supposed electronic signature had been applied from an internet address connected to Natalie's office. The identity verification questions had been answered using information only close family would know. The name of my first employer, the street where we grew up, and the month our grandmother died. The lender had also received a copy of my driver's license. I remembered giving that copy to my mother the previous year when she said the family insurance agent needed updated records. When I called her, she insisted she had no idea how Natalie obtained it. Her answer came too quickly. Emma watched my face as I ended the call. "You don't believe her," she said. I told her I did not know what I believed anymore. That was the part no one warned me about. Discovering betrayal did not instantly make me brave. It made me question every ordinary memory attached to it. I remembered my mother bringing soup when I was sick, my father teaching me to drive, Natalie sleeping on my floor after a painful breakup. Good memories did not disappear simply because they had been used to gain access to me. They became contaminated, and that felt worse. I opened the property account and traced the loan proceeds. $90,000 had gone to Natalie's event company. $68,000 had been transferred to a vendor listed as Mercer Hospitality Design, a company connected to Daniel's restaurant project. $42,000 had paid wedding deposits. Another $27,000 had moved through my parents' consulting business before returning to Natalie as a family gift. The remaining amount had been consumed by fees and overdue bills. Daniel's company receiving money troubled me, but the transfer description suggested an investment he might have believed came from Natalie personally. I did not yet know whether he was involved or being used. Then Emma found the first twist. A spreadsheet hidden inside a shared archive showed projected ownership after the wedding. Natalie had listed herself as sole controller of Mariner's Point, Daniel as a future investor, and me under a column labeled Released Interest. The date was 2 months before my parents sent the conditions. Beside my name, Natalie had written, "Will sign to preserve invitation." I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. She had not hoped I would agree. She had calculated that I would. My lifelong desire to avoid embarrassing the family had become an asset on her spreadsheet. I wanted to call her and tell her I had seen everything, but Emma stopped me. "She has been planning around your reactions," she said. "Do not give her a new reaction to plan around." We continued. In an old voice message thread, I found a recording Natalie had sent after too much wine during a business conference. At the time, I had dismissed it as one of her dramatic late-night complaints. Now it sounded different. She said our parents were finally handling Lily, that once I signed the wedding papers, the loan would become too shared to challenge, and that Daniel never needed to know where the restaurant money originated because he would repay it after opening. Her voice was playful, almost bored. At the end, she laughed and said, "She'll be angry for a month, then she'll fix it like she always does." I played the message twice. The second time, I felt no surge of victory. I felt ashamed because part of me recognized the pattern as accurately as she did. I had fixed it like I always did. I had protected Natalie from creditors, employers, former friends, and our parents' disappointment. I had called that love because admitting it was fear would have required me to change sooner. That became the emotional center of the gift. I did not want the presentation to be a collection of humiliating childhood stories. I wanted it to show a chain of adult decisions: the forged signature, the diverted funds, the false release, the planned deception of Daniel, and my parents' effort to secure my cooperation. We built a 12-minute video using only documents that could be authenticated. No dramatic music, no insults. Each screen showed a date, an amount, and the source. The final slide contained one sentence: "A wedding cannot create trust where fraud has been used to manufacture consent." I also prepared 3 sealed folders. One was addressed to Daniel and contained the complete transaction trail affecting his restaurant. One was addressed to my parents and contained the notice from my attorney demanding preservation of records. The last was addressed to Natalie. Inside it was a copy of the 5 conditions, my 4-word refusal, and a formal demand that she repay the stolen funds and relinquish management access to Mariner's Point. On top, I placed a handwritten note: "You asked for a public apology. This is the public accounting." Emma read it and said it was cold. I told her cold was safer than cruel. The gift would not invent consequences. It would remove the secrecy that had prevented consequences from reaching her. Still, as I sealed the box, I wondered whether truth delivered in front of 300 people was justice or punishment. I did not have a clean answer. I only knew that every private conversation had ended with pressure, denial, or another document pushed toward me. Public image was the shield Natalie valued most. If I wanted her to stop using that shield, I had to place the facts where image could no longer replace them. The next problem was delivery. I refused to sneak into the wedding, impersonate a vendor, or depend on someone secretly filming guests. Natalie had already created the opening I needed. Her planner had sent every close relative a schedule for the legacy gift ceremony, a 40-minute event before the vows in which selected presents would be opened while a professional live stream ran for remote guests. Natalie had designed it to display the life she wanted everyone to admire. My name was still printed beside the final presentation slot, followed by the words, "Sisters Tribute Video." My parents apparently assumed I would surrender before the deadline. I emailed the planner and said I would not attend, but would honor the scheduled tribute. I attached the video, provided the tracking number for the box, and requested written confirmation that the sealed folders would remain inside until Natalie opened them. The planner replied that Natalie had personally instructed her to feature my contribution because family reconciliation was part of the wedding narrative. The irony was so exact that I almost laughed. My attorney reviewed every item before shipment. She also sent the lender a formal affidavit disputing the signature and requested an immediate freeze on further draws against Mariner's Point. We did not ask the bank to announce anything during the wedding. We did not need to. Once the fraud report entered the system, Natalie would lose access to the remaining credit, and the lender would contact every guarantor listed on the file. At 9:12 the next morning, my father called. He skipped hello. "What did you tell the bank?" he demanded. I said I had told them the truth. He warned me that contractors, vendors, and Daniel's restaurant could be harmed. I asked why my forged signature had been acceptable when the harm belonged only to me. He said, "This is bigger than one signature." That sentence confirmed more than he intended. I asked whether he had known. He remained silent for 4 seconds, then said my mother had only provided identification because Natalie promised the paperwork was temporary. I wrote the time of his admission on a legal pad. "You let her use my license," I said. He replied that parents sometimes make difficult choices to keep a family together. I told him families held together by unauthorized debt were already broken. He lowered his voice and offered a new deal: sign the release, attend quietly, and he would persuade Natalie to repay me over 5 years. I asked what would secure the payments. He said trust. I ended the call. My mother tried a different approach. She sent photographs of Natalie as a little girl, then wrote that my decision would define me forever. I nearly answered. Instead, I forwarded the messages to my attorney and turned off notifications. That evening, Natalie called from an unknown number. Her first words were, "Do you have any idea what you're threatening?" She claimed the loan was almost repaid, Daniel would be humiliated, and our parents could lose their business. Then her tone softened. She said she wanted me beside her at the wedding, and that sisters should not let paperwork destroy a once-in-a-lifetime day. I asked her to state clearly whether she had signed my name. She paused, then said, "I did what everyone needed." Emma, sitting across from me, heard it on speaker. Natalie continued, "You always land on your feet. I needed one thing to be mine." There it was. Not remorse, but entitlement dressed as pain. I told her the box was already in transit. She shouted my name, then demanded to know what was inside. I said, "Everything you were sure I would keep private." After the call, my hands shook so badly I spilled water across the table. Emma did not congratulate me. She helped clean it up. The following morning, we checked into the Malibu suite I had booked, and I placed my phone beside the live stream link. I did not feel powerful. I felt like I had stepped onto a bridge after setting fire to the road behind me. At 4 p.m. California time, the legacy gift ceremony would begin in a ballroom 3 time zones away. At 3:47, the planner sent one message. "Your package is on the presentation table. The bride insisted yours be opened last." Natalie still believed she could control the ending. The live stream opened with a wide view of the ballroom. White orchids climbed the columns, candles covered the tables, and a gold monogram with Natalie and Daniel's initials glowed behind the stage. I could hear more than 300 guests talking as servers moved between them with champagne. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the MC welcomed everyone to the private celebration before the vows and explained that the couple wanted to honor the families who made this day possible. Emma sat beside me on the sofa, but neither of us spoke. One by one, relatives came forward. Daniel's parents presented an antique watch. My aunt gave Natalie our grandmother's pearl comb. My parents announced that they were contributing to the couple's future home. Each gift produced applause and another carefully framed photograph. Natalie looked radiant. If she was frightened by my phone call, she hid it well. When the MC reached the final item, my mother leaned toward Natalie and whispered something. Natalie shook her head. The MC smiled at the camera and said, "Our last tribute comes from the bride's sister, Lily, who could not be with us today, but sent something especially meaningful." A murmur moved through the room. Natalie stood before anyone could stop her. "My sister and I have had our differences," she said, wearing the soft, wounded expression she used whenever she wanted sympathy. "But I believe today is about forgiveness." Applause followed. My father did not clap. The box was carried onto the stage. It was walnut, polished, and tied with an ivory ribbon. Natalie glanced toward the live stream camera as if she were looking directly at me. "Whatever she sent," she said, "I accept it with love." She opened the lid. On top was a silver frame displaying a photograph of Natalie and me at Mariner's Point when we were teenagers. Beneath it lay an envelope labeled, "Read aloud." She smiled, clearly expecting an apology, and handed the envelope to the MC. He unfolded the single page. His expression changed after the first line. Natalie reached for it, but he had already read enough for the microphone to carry the words across the room. "To my sister. You asked me to surrender my legal claims, my property interest, my silence, and $25,000 in exchange for permission to attend your wedding. I declined because consent obtained through pressure is not consent." The ballroom went still. My mother rose from her chair. Natalie snatched the letter and scanned the rest. "Turn off the microphone," she whispered. The MC looked toward the planner, uncertain. Then the ballroom screen changed. The tribute video had begun automatically at the time listed in the program. The first slide showed the 5 conditions exactly as my parents had sent them. The second highlighted the release language hidden on page 6. Guests began reading. Daniel stepped closer to the screen. Natalie hurried toward the control table, but the planner blocked her and said the presentation had been approved under her own written instructions. The third slide displayed the $240,000 loan, the disputed signature, and the internet address connected to Natalie's office. Daniel turned toward her. "Why is Lily's name on that?" he asked. Natalie said the document was misleading. The video moved to the transfer chart. $90,000 to her company, $42,000 to wedding deposits, $68,000 to Daniel's restaurant project. His face changed when he saw his business listed. "You told me that money came from your retained earnings," he said. Natalie reached for his arm. He stepped back. My father pushed toward the stage, shouting that private documents were being used out of context. Then the recording played. Natalie's own voice filled the ballroom. "Once Lily signs, the loan becomes too shared to challenge. Daniel never needs to know where the restaurant money started." Her laugh followed. It sounded sharper through the speakers than it had on my laptop. Natalie froze. For 1 second, no one moved. Then she screamed, "Shut it off! Shut it off now!" The sound was not fear of anything inside the box. It was terror at hearing her private certainty become public evidence. She grabbed the silver frame and threw it onto the table, knocking over a vase. Daniel opened the folder addressed to him. Inside was the full transaction trail and a letter from my attorney advising him to obtain independent counsel before combining any assets or signing the marriage license. He read the first page, then looked at Natalie as if he had never seen her before. On the screen, the final slide appeared. "This presentation has also been provided to the lender and legal counsel. No one in this room is being asked to choose a side. You are being asked to look at the record." The video ended. There was no music, no dramatic photograph, and no image of me. Just a black screen and the date. Across the country, in a quiet Malibu suite, I watched my sister realize that the story she had prepared for the room no longer belonged to her. For several seconds after the screen went dark, the ballroom remained silent. Then everyone seemed to speak at once. Daniel's father pulled him aside. My aunt asked my mother whether the conditions were real. 2 of Natalie's business clients moved toward the exit while staring at the transfer chart they had photographed. The planner turned off the live stream's public audio, but my private feed continued through a backup link she had sent earlier, so I could still see the stage. Natalie was crying now, not quietly. She pointed at the box and told the room I had fabricated everything because I could not tolerate her happiness. My mother rushed to her side and repeated that the documents lacked context. My father took the microphone and asked the guests to respect a temporary family misunderstanding. That phrase broke whatever patience Daniel had left. He walked to the center of the stage, holding the folder addressed to him, and asked Natalie a direct question. "Did you authorize the transfer into my company without telling me the source?" She answered that she had been trying to help him. He asked whether she had forged my signature. She said I would have approved the loan eventually. He asked whether my parents knew. My mother began speaking for her, but Daniel raised his hand and said, "I asked Natalie." Natalie looked around the room as though searching for the person most likely to rescue her. For the first time, no one volunteered. She finally admitted that she had completed the online signature because a lender deadline was approaching. She insisted that the property value made the loan harmless and that I had always opposed her success. Daniel opened another page. "This says you plan to transfer Lily's ownership to yourself after she signed a release. Was that harmless too?" Natalie's face hardened. The tears stopped. She told him marriage required loyalty and that he should be defending her, not interrogating her in front of strangers. He said, "These are not strangers. These are witnesses." My father moved toward him, warning him not to make a permanent decision in an emotional moment. Daniel replied that the permanent decision had already been made when his business was funded with disputed money. He removed the wedding ring from his pocket, not yet worn because the vows had not begun, and placed the box on the table. "There will be no ceremony today," he said. The room reacted with a collective gasp. Natalie grabbed his jacket and demanded that he reconsider. He stepped away and asked security to escort him to a private room where he could speak with his attorney and business partners. My mother shouted that I had destroyed the wedding. At that moment, the planner approached the microphone and said there was a video call request from me on the presentation system. I had not planned to appear, but Daniel had texted Emma through the number in my attorney's letter and asked whether I would answer 3 questions. Emma looked at me. I almost refused. Then I remembered how many times my family had spoken about me while preventing me from speaking for myself. I accepted. My face appeared on a smaller side screen. The ballroom quieted again. I could see Natalie staring up at me, her makeup streaked, fury replacing panic. Daniel asked whether I had ever authorized the loan. "No," I said. He asked whether I had approved the transfer to his company. "No." He asked whether I had demanded the wedding be canceled. "No, I disputed my signature and disclosed the source of the money. What you do with that information is your decision." Natalie shouted that I was pretending to be innocent after timing the gift for maximum humiliation. I told her she was right about one thing. I had chosen a public setting. I had done it because every private setting had been used to pressure me into silence, and because she had planned to present my surrender as proof that the family supported her. "You wanted my apology on that screen," I said. "You wanted the room to witness a lie. I gave them the documents instead." My father ordered the technician to cut the call. Daniel said, "Let her finish." I did not deliver a speech. I looked at my parents and asked whether they had provided Natalie with my driver's license. My mother covered her mouth. My father said it had been a mistake. I asked whether they had read the release before demanding that I sign it. He said their attorney had assured them it would prevent litigation. That admission moved through the room more powerfully than any accusation I could have made. My aunt turned to my mother and said, "You knew this was not about wedding behavior." My mother began crying. She said they had been afraid that if the loan collapsed, Natalie's business, Daniel's restaurant, and Mariner's Point would all fail together. I answered, "So you decided I should fail quietly instead." No one contradicted me. Natalie then made the mistake that ended the last possibility of sympathy. She shouted, "Because you could afford it." The words rang across the ballroom. She continued before anyone stopped her, saying I had a successful firm, no wedding expenses, and no children depending on me. So absorbing the debt would have cost me less than it cost her to lose everything. Daniel stared at her. My parents stared at the floor. In one sentence, she confirmed the belief behind every condition. My stability made me available for exploitation. I told her wealth did not convert theft into sharing. Then I ended the call. What happened next reached me through messages over the following hour. Daniel left with his parents and instructed the officiant not to sign or submit any license. His business partner froze all spending connected to the disputed investment. The lender suspended the Mariner's Point credit line and notified every listed guarantor. 2 clients canceled contracts with Natalie's company before the ballroom had emptied. The wedding venue demanded immediate payment for the remaining balance, but the card Natalie provided was declined because it drew from the frozen property account. My father paid the emergency balance from his personal savings to avoid a lawsuit from the venue. Natalie refused to leave the bridal suite until security informed her that the booking ended at midnight. By then, the flowers, the band, the custom dinner, and the monogrammed stage remained in place for a wedding that no longer existed. I did not celebrate. I closed the laptop and walked onto the balcony. The ocean below was black except where the moon caught the surface. Emma stood beside me without speaking. I had wanted the truth to create consequences. I had not expected the consequences to feel so much like grief. The investigation lasted 7 months. The lender's digital records confirmed that Natalie had used my personal information from her office and that my mother had sent the license copy from her email. My parents avoided criminal charges by cooperating, surrendering documents, and admitting their role in the attempted release. Cooperation did not protect them from the financial consequences. Their consulting company had received $27,000 from the loan, so the lender treated them as participants in an unauthorized transaction. They sold their lake condo, emptied most of their retirement account, and paid a substantial settlement toward the property debt. My father resigned from 2 nonprofit boards after the dispute became public. My mother stopped speaking to several relatives who refused to describe the incident as Lily's revenge. Natalie faced the heaviest consequences. Her event company collapsed within 3 months because clients no longer trusted her with deposits. Daniel permanently ended the engagement and returned every gift he could identify. His restaurant project survived only after he replaced the disputed money with a legitimate investment and signed an agreement separating his business from Natalie's claims. He sent me 1 letter thanking me for the documents and apologizing for benefiting from money he had not questioned carefully enough. I believed him, but I did not become part of his life. Some endings do not need a new friendship attached to them. Natalie eventually accepted a plea agreement involving fraud and identity misuse. She received a suspended sentence, community supervision, and a restitution order large enough to follow her for years. She also transferred her share of Mariner's Point into a court-supervised trust until the debt was resolved. I became the temporary manager, not because I wanted to win the property, but because someone had to rebuild the records and restore the business. Within a year, the venue was profitable again. I used part of my management fee to create a small legal aid fund for people disputing financial abuse by relatives. That decision gave the experience a purpose beyond punishment. My relationship with my parents did not recover. They wrote letters, sent holiday cards, and asked for counseling. I agreed to 1 session. During it, my father said they had believed I was the strongest person in the family. I told him strength was not consent to carry everyone else's consequences. My mother apologized, but she still asked whether the public presentation had been necessary. I answered honestly, perhaps not. I could have let the lawyers handle everything privately, but privacy had protected them for years, and they had planned to use the wedding crowd to certify a false version of events. I was not sorry that the same crowd saw the record. I was sorry that none of us had stopped the pattern before a ballroom became the only place where denial could no longer survive. Natalie contacted me once after sentencing. Her message contained no greeting. She wrote, "You got everything." I replied, "No, I kept what was mine." Then I blocked the number. On the first anniversary of the canceled wedding, I returned to Malibu alone. I opened the photograph that had been inside the gift box, the one of Natalie and me at Mariner's Point before money, businesses, and family roles hardened around us. For a moment, I missed the sister in that picture. Then I understood that missing who someone used to be does not require reopening the door to who they chose to become. I had not mailed a dangerous object. I had mailed evidence. The terror came from recognition. Natalie had built her future on the assumption that I would protect her from the truth. And when that assumption failed, everything resting on it failed too. Some people called what I did revenge. Others called it accountability. I still think it was both. The difference is that revenge alone would have ended with her humiliation. Accountability continued through restitution, boundaries, and the work of rebuilding what her decisions damaged. So tell me honestly, if your family demanded that you sign away your rights to preserve a perfect celebration, would you expose the truth publicly, or would you let the law speak in private and walk away?
Thank you for giving this story your time and attention. All characters, events, and outcomes are fictional and made only for entertainment and reflection. We hope it reminds you that when someone benefits from your loyalty but never protects your head, living is not betrayal, it is finally correcting an imbalance that lasted too long.